The Distinguished Flying Cross ceremony was meant to honor Captain Maya A-10 for the most controversial close air support mission in recent Afghan history. 200 airmen stood at attention as General Whitmore prepared to pin the medal on her chest. What the Air Force did not know, what the investigation had never uncovered, was that Maya had violated 17 separate regulations that day. And she would do it again in a heartbeat, because those 17 violations had saved 31 Marines who were never supposed to survive. 72 hours earlier, Maya walked through the halls of the Craig Joint Theater Hospital at Bagram with a box of contraband tucked under her arm. Before we continue, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you have witnessed the bond between service members where you are from. The nurse at the desk recognized her flight suit and nodded toward room 7 without asking questions. Everyone on base knew Captain Okonkwo by now. They called her Whisperer, which was a joke because there was nothing quiet about what her A-10 did to enemy positions. Lance Corporal Dominic Frazier was sitting up when she entered, his left arm wrapped in fresh bandages and his eyes still carrying the hollow look of someone who had seen too much too fast. He was 20 years old. He had been in Afghanistan for 6 weeks. 3 days ago, Maya had put her aircraft into a dive that should have killed her to pull Taliban fighters off his convoy. She set the box on his bedside table and opened it to reveal 2 cheeseburgers from the contractor mess hall, the closest thing to real American food on this base. Frazier stared at them like she had brought him gold. "You did not have to do this, ma'am," he said. Maya pulled up a chair and sat down. "I did not have to do a lot of things, Corporal. Ate one of those burgers anyway. How is the arm? Doc say I will keep it." He paused, his voice catching. "The other guys in my truck were not so lucky." Maya leaned forward. She had read the after-action report. She knew exactly who had made it and who had not. But she also knew that survival carried its own weight, and this young Marine was going to spend years wondering why he lived when others did not. "You were alive because you kept fighting," she said. "You stayed in that turret until the last second. That is not luck. That is training. That is who you are." Frazier's eyes welled, but he blinked it back. "The pilot who saved us. That was you, right?" They said it was a woman. Said she flew so low they could see the shark teeth painted on her nose. Maya smiled. "Misbehavior. That is my aircraft. She has been with me through 4 deployments. At this point, I think she flies herself and just lets me come along for the ride." The young Marine laughed, and for a moment, the hollow look faded. "Thank you, ma'am. I mean it." Maya stood and squeezed his uninjured shoulder. "You focus on healing. Get back home. Eat those burgers before the nurses find them." She left the hospital with the afternoon sun hitting her face and walked toward the flight line where misbehavior waited. The A-10 Thunderbolt II was not a pretty aircraft. She was built like a flying tank, all function and no elegance, with her massive Gu-8 cannon jutting from beneath the nose like a warning to anyone stupid enough to threaten American ground troops. Most pilots wanted the sleek lines of an F-22 or the speed of an F-16. Maya had chosen this beast on purpose, and she had never regretted it. Chief Master Sergeant Delroy Washington was already there, his hands covered in grease and his gray hair hidden beneath a worn ball cap that had seen more deployments than most generals. Everyone called him Pops. He had kept A-10s flying through 3 wars, and he had known Maya's father before a training accident took him when Maya was 16. Pops looked up as she approached. "There is my favorite pilot. How is the kid?" "He will make it," Maya said. "Thanks to you keeping misbehavior in the air." Pops wiped his hands on a rag and gave her a look that carried decades of unspoken understanding. "Your daddy would be proud, Maya. The way you fly, the way you take care of these Marines. He would be real proud." Maya touched the nose of her aircraft, her fingers tracing the faded shark teeth painted there. She did not trust her voice to respond, so she just nodded. The moment was broken by the sound of a vehicle approaching. A staff car pulled onto the flight line, and a lieutenant colonel stepped out with the rigid posture of someone who had spent more time in conference rooms than cockpits. He surveyed the area like he was cataloging violations, and when his eyes landed on Maya, something flickered across his face that she did not like. Pops leaned in close. "That is the new squadron commander, Lieutenant Colonel Largrove. Came in while you were flying yesterday." Word is he has never seen combat. Pentagon staff officer. Maya watched Hargrove approach, her instincts already prickling. She had survived 4 deployments by trusting her gut, and right now her gut was telling her that this man was going to be a problem. Captain Okonkwo, Hargrove said, stopping precisely 3 feet away. I observed your training exercise this morning from the tower. That gun run you executed brought you within 15 meters of the simulated friendly position. Yes, sir, Maya replied. That is the standard I hold myself to. A-10s exist for close air support. Close means close. Hargrove's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. We need to discuss your definition of acceptable risk, Captain. My office. 0800 tomorrow. He turned and walked away without waiting for her response, and Maya felt the first cold fingers of dread wrap around her chest. She had faced Taliban fighters, anti-aircraft fire, and sandstorms that could strip paint for metal. But something about Lieutenant Colonel Preston Hargrove told her that the most dangerous enemy she had ever faced might be wearing the same uniform. Maya arrived at Lieutenant Colonel Hargrove's office at 0755. She had learned long ago that being early showed respect, while being exactly on time showed something else entirely. She wanted Hargrove to know that she took this seriously, even if every instinct told her this meeting was going to end badly. The office was immaculate. Not a single paper out of place, not a single personal item visible, except for a framed photograph on the desk that Maya could not see from where she stood. Hargrove sat behind his desk with his hands folded, watching her enter with the expression of a man who had already made up his mind about something. Close the door, Captain. Have a seat. Maya sat in the chair across from him and waited. She had dealt with difficult commanders before. The key was to stay calm, stay professional, and never give them ammunition they could use against you. Hargrove opened a folder on his desk. I have been reviewing your service record. Impressive on paper. For deployments. Multiple commendations. The Marines seem to love you. The way he said it made it sound like an accusation. I do my job, sir, Maya replied. The Marines are the reason I do it. Hargrove nodded slowly. And yet I see a pattern here that concerns me. You have a habit of pushing boundaries. Flying lower than regulations allow. Engaging targets at ranges that put you at unnecessary risk. Your gun camera footage from last week shows you passing within 12 meters of a friendly position. 12 meters, Maya said, keeping her voice steady. And every round hit exactly where I intended. 0 friendly casualties. Falta en mi guia. That convoy made it home because I was willing to get close enough to do the job right. Hargrove leaned forward. And what happens when you miss, Captain? What happens when one of those 30mm rounds drifts 2 meters to the left and kills the Marines you were trying to save? Maya felt her jaw tighten. In 8 years of flying, I have never had a friendly fire incident. My precision record is the best in the squadron. The best in theater. Records can change in an instant, Hargrove said. One mistake. One moment of overconfidence. That is all it takes. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the flight line where the A-10s sat in their revetments. Maya noticed his shoulders were tense, his hands clasped behind his back a little too tightly. Do you know why I requested this command, Captain? No, sir. Hargrove turned to face her. The Pentagon is conducting a review of the A-10 program. There are people in Washington who believe this aircraft is obsolete. Too slow. Too vulnerable. They want to retire the entire fleet and redirect those resources to 5th-generation fighters. Maya felt something cold settle in her stomach. The A-10 is the most effective close air support platform in existence. Ask any Marine or soldier who's been saved by one. I'm not asking them, Hargrove said. I am telling you what is happening. My job here is to evaluate this squadron's performance and make recommendations. If I find evidence of reckless behavior, of pilots who treat regulations as suggestions, that will factor into my report. The implication hung in the air between them. Maya understood now. Hargrove was not just a by-the-book commander. He was here to build a case, and pilots like her were either going to fall in line or become evidence for the prosecution. Is there anything else, sir? Maya asked, not trusting herself to say more. Hargrove sat back down and closed the folder. Just a reminder, Captain. The rules exist for a reason. I expect you to follow them. Dismissed. Maya left the office with anger burning in her chest. She walked straight to the maintenance hangar where she knew Pops would be working on one of the older aircraft in the squadron. He looked up as she entered, took one look at her face, and set down his wrench. That bad, huh? Maya leaned against the tool cart and let out a long breath. He's going to ground the entire A-10 program if he gets his way. Says we are reckless. Says the Pentagon wants us gone. Pops shook his head slowly. I have seen his type before. Career officers who never heard a shot fired in anger, making decisions about people who have. He paused, his expression softening. But Maya, there is something you should know about him. What? His brother was a Marine, killed in 2007 by friendly fire. Airstrike went wrong. Pilot misjudged the distance. Pops met her eyes. That is not an excuse for what he is doing, but it might explain why he is so scared of pilots like you. Maya absorbed this information, feeling some of her anger shift into something more complicated. She understood loss. She understood how it could shape you, twist your thinking, make you see threats everywhere. There was a mission, she said quietly. Sanjin Valley, 3 years ago. I was providing cover for a patrol that got ambushed. Taliban had them pinned in a compound, and I had a clear shot. But I hesitated, second-guessed myself, worried about the angle, the distance, whether I could make it clean. Pops waited, saying nothing. By the time I finally engaged, one of the Marines had taken a round. Sergeant Coburn, 26 years old, 2 kids at home. He died on a medevac before they could get him to surgery. Maya's voice cracked slightly, and she paused to steady herself. I told myself after that day that I would never hesitate again. If I have the shot, I take it. If getting close is what saves lives, I get close. That is not recklessness, Pops. That is the lesson I learned watching a good man die, because I was too careful. Pops put his hand on her shoulder. I know, Maya. And the Marines you have saved since then, they know too. Do not let Hargrove make you doubt what you have become. The moment was interrupted by First Lieutenant Kevin Park jogging into the hangar. He was young, eager, and had the look of someone carrying news he did not want to deliver. Captain Okonkwo, he said, slightly out of breath, just came from the intelligence briefing. Taliban activity is spiking across Helmand Province. Multiple Marine units are stretched thin out there. Command is expecting increased requests for air support over the next 72 hours. Maya straightened, her personal concerns immediately pushed aside. What units? Several, Park said, but there is one forward operating base that has them worried. FOB Reaper. Small outpost, only about 3 dozen Marines. They are reporting movement in the hills around their position. Intel thinks something big might be coming. Maya exchanged a look with Pops. 3 dozen Marines in an isolated position with Taliban massing around them. She had seen this scenario before. She knew exactly how fast it could turn deadly. I need to be in the air, she said. If those Marines need support, I need to be ready. Park nodded, but his expression was troubled. That is the thing, Captain. I heard Hargrove talking to Major Walsh after the briefing. He is concerned about asset allocation and risk assessment protocols. He wants to review all mission assignments personally before any aircraft launches. Maya felt the cold dread return, settling into her bones like ice. Hargrove was going to put himself between her and the Marines who might need her. In the name of protocol, in the name of regulations, he was going to create exactly the kind of delay that got people killed. Somewhere in the mountains of Helmand Province, 34 Marines were watching the hills and waiting for help that might never come. And Maya was trapped on a flight line, fighting an enemy she could not shoot. The squadron ready room fell silent when Maya walked in the next morning. Every pilot turned to look at her, and she knew immediately that word had spread. In a place like Bugram, news traveled faster than the aircraft. First Lieutenant Park was the first to speak. Captain, is it true? Hargrove put you on stand down? Maya set her flight bag on an empty chair. Risk tolerance review. He says it is standard procedure for pilots with my mission profile. That is garbage, said Captain Terrell Monroe, a 10-year veteran who had flown with Maya on her second deployment. Your mission profile is the reason half the Marines in Hellman are still breathing. Hargrove has been here 3 days. What does he know about how we operate? He knows what he wants to know, Maya replied. And right now, what he wants is justification for shutting down the A-10 program. I'm giving him exactly what he needs by being the cowboy pilot who does not follow rules. The other pilots exchanged looks of frustration and disbelief. These were men and women who had flown into enemy fire together, who had trusted each other with their lives. They understood what Hargrove did not, that the rules Maya bent were the same rules that made the difference between dead Marines and living ones. Major Terrence Walsh entered the ready room, and the conversation stopped. Walsh was the operations officer, a career pilot who had earned respect from everyone in the squadron. He looked tired, like a man caught between two forces he could not control. Listen up, he said. I know you have all heard about Captain Okonkwo's status. I want to be clear that this is a temporary administrative review, nothing more. In the meantime, mission assignments will continue as normal. Park, you're taking the alert rotation that was scheduled for Okonkwo. Park straightened. Yes, sir. Walsh met Maya's eyes for just a moment, and she saw something there that looked like apology. Then he turned and left, and Maya understood that he was doing what he could within the constraints Hargrove had created. The day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Maya sat in the operations center and watched the mission board's update, watched other pilots scramble to their aircraft while she remained grounded. Every radio call from Marines requesting air support felt like a knife twisting in her gut. Pops found her in the afternoon, studying maps of Helmand Province spread across a table in the back of the hangar. You're going to wear holes in that paper, he said. Maya traced her finger along a valley northwest of FOB Reaper. Look at this terrain. These ridgelines provide perfect cover for an ambush force. If Taliban fighters mass in these positions, they could hit the FOB from 3 directions simultaneously. Pops leaned over her shoulder. You think that is what is coming? I think 34 Marines are sitting in a vulnerable position and nobody with the authority to do anything about it is taking the threat seriously. Maya pushed back from the table. I tried to talk to Hargrove an hour ago. He would not even see me. Said the review process has to remain independent and that my input would compromise objectivity. That is a fancy way of saying he does not want to hear what you have to say. That is exactly what it is. The afternoon alert siren cut through the hangar, and Maya's heart jumped. She ran to the operations center in time to see Park and Monroe sprinting toward the flight line. The mission board showed a troops in contact call from Marine Patrol 15 kilometers south of FOB Reaper. Maya grabbed the headset and listened to the radio traffic. Park's voice came through clear and professional as he checked in with the forward air controller on the ground. The situation was hot. Marines pinned by enemy fire in a narrow wadi. They needed gun runs to suppress the Taliban positions. Park made his first pass, and Maya heard the distinctive sound of the Gu-8 cannon through the radio. The forward air controller called the hits and requested a second run on a position closer to the Marine lines. This is where it gets tricky, Monroe said over the radio. That position is inside danger close range. Park's response came after a long pause. I am seeing it. The angle is not great. I'm going to try to come around for a better approach. Maya's hands tightened on the console. She knew that terrain. She knew that if Park took the time to reposition, the Taliban would have 30 more seconds to pour fire into those Marines. She also knew that Park was a good pilot, but he did not have her experience with these situations. He was doing what training told him to do. He was being careful. The next 2 minutes felt like hours. Park made his second run from a safer angle, and the forward air controller reported good hits. The Taliban broke contact and withdrew. The Marines were safe. But Maya had heard what nobody else seemed to notice. The hesitation, the extra time, the careful approach that could have cost lives if the situation had been slightly worse. That night, she stood alone on the flight line under a sky full of stars that seemed impossibly bright. Misbehavior sat in her revetment, silent and waiting. Maya walked to the aircraft and placed her hand on the cold metal of the nose, right between the painted shark teeth. I know, girl, she whispered. I want to be up there too. The sound of footsteps made her turn. Hargrove was walking across the tarmac toward her, his uniform still crisp despite the late hour. He stopped a few meters away, and for a moment neither of them spoke. "You should be in your quarters, Captain." Maya did not move her hand from the aircraft. "I cannot sleep. Figure I would check on my bird." Hargrove looked at misbehavior with an expression Maya could not read. "You really love this aircraft." "I love what she does," Maya replied. "I love that when Marines are dying, she gives me the power to stop it. That is not something you can understand from a desk in Washington." Hargrove's jaw tightened. "You think I do not understand sacrifice, Captain? You think I do not know what it costs when things go wrong? I think you are so afraid of things going wrong that you cannot see when they're going right." The words hung between them, sharp and unretractable. Hargrove stared at her for a long moment, and Maya saw something flicker in his eyes. Pain. Old pain that had never healed. "You're confined to base until the review is complete," he said finally. "That is not a suggestion." He turned and walked away, leaving Maya alone with her aircraft and the growing certainty that somewhere in those dark mountains, something terrible was building. And when it broke, she would not be there to stop it. Across the valley, barely visible against the black ridgeline, a light flickered once and then disappeared. Signal fires. The Taliban were communicating. They were coordinating. An FOB Reaper had no idea what was about to hit them. Maya woke before dawn on the second day of her grounding with the bitter taste of a nightmare still lingering. Sanjin Valley. It always came back to Sanjin Valley. She lay in her bunk and let the memory wash over her, no longer fighting it. 3 years ago, a Marine patrol had walked into a Taliban ambush in a narrow canyon. Maya had been on station within minutes, circling above while Sergeant First Class David Coburn kept his men alive through sheer force of will. She could still hear his voice on the radio, calm and steady even as rounds cracked past his position. "Whisper, we have hostiles dug in on the north slope, 40 meters from our position. Can you engage?" Maya had seen the target. She had the shot, but the angle was steep and the Marines were so close, and every regulation she had ever learned screamed at her to reposition, to find a safer approach, to be absolutely certain before she pulled the trigger. She had hesitated. 15 seconds, maybe 20, an eternity in combat. By the time she made her gun run, Sergeant Coburn had taken a round through the chest, trying to suppress the position himself. He died on the medevac helicopter with Maya's voice still in his ears, telling him help was coming, telling him to hold on. The inquiry cleared her of any wrongdoing. She had followed procedure. She had made the safe choice. And David Coburn's 2 children would grow up without a father because Maya had been too careful. She pushed herself out of bed and dressed in the gray light of morning. The memory was a scar she carried everywhere, invisible but always present. It had changed her, made her faster, more aggressive, more willing to accept risk to herself if it meant the Marines on the ground had a better chance. Hargrove saw that as recklessness. Maya knew it was the opposite. It was the lesson written in blood that she would never forget. The operations center was already busy when she arrived. Maya found Major Walsh reviewing overnight intelligence reports and approached him with a request to assist with mission planning. Walsh looked uncomfortable. "Captain, I appreciate the offer, but Colonel Hargrove has made it clear that you are not to participate in operational activities until your review is complete." "I'm not asking to fly," Maya said. "I'm asking to help. I know this terrain better than anyone in the squadron. I can contribute without ever leaving the ground." Before Walsh could respond, Hargrove's voice cut across the room. "Captain Okonkwo, my office." Now, Maya followed him down the corridor, already knowing what was coming. Hargrove closed the door behind them and turned with cold fury in his eyes. "I gave you a direct order to remain confined to base. I did not give you permission to insert yourself into operations. Sir, I was only trying to help with planning. The situation in Helmand is deteriorating, and I have relevant experience that could save lives." "Your relevant experience is exactly what I am evaluating," Hargrove snapped. "And your continued attempts to circumvent my authority are not helping your case." He moved behind his desk and sat down. "Effective immediately, you are restricted from the operations center, the ready room, and the flight line. You will remain in your quarters unless specifically summoned. Maya felt the walls closing in. You are isolating me from everything that matters. I am ensuring the integrity of this review. Hargrove's voice was ice. You're dismissed, Captain. She left without another word, her hands trembling with suppressed rage. In the hallway, Walsh caught up to her. Maya, wait. He pulled her into an empty office and closed the door. I need you to understand something. Hargrove is documenting everything. Every conversation, every request you make, every time you push back against his restrictions. He is building a file. A file for what? Walsh hesitated. I do not know for certain, but I think he wants to make an example of you. Prove that A-10 pilots are undisciplined, dangerous. Your court-martial would be the perfect evidence for his report to Washington. Maya stared at him. He would sacrifice my career to kill a weapons program? I think he genuinely believes he is doing the right thing. Walsh's voice was heavy with resignation. That is what makes him so dangerous. The rest of the day passed in isolation. Maya stayed in her quarters as ordered, but Pops found ways to keep her informed. He stopped by twice with maintenance reports that happened to include folded notes about intelligence updates. Taliban activity was increasing. Marine patrols were reporting more contact. FOB Reaper had requested additional support that had not yet been approved. In the late afternoon, Park knocked on her door. He looked exhausted, his flight suit still carrying the smell of jet fuel and sweat. Maya pulled him inside. What happened out there? Park sat on the edge of her bunk and rubbed his face with both hands. It is getting worse. We flew 3 missions today, all troops in contact. The Taliban are probing, testing our response times, learning our patterns. He looked up at her with haunted eyes. I had a situation this morning. Marines pinned down, enemy position right on top of them. I could not get the angle right. I tried 4 different approaches, and none of them were clean. What did you do? I called in for guidance. Waited for authorization. By the time I finally engaged, 2 Marines were wounded. Park's voice cracked. They're going to be okay, but it should not have happened. If you had been there, you would have found a way. Maya sat beside him. You did what you were trained to do. You followed procedure, and it almost was not enough. Park met her eyes. Something big is coming, Captain. I can feel it. The way the Taliban are moving, the way they are coordinating. This is not random violence. They are planning something. Maya thought about the signal fire she had seen on the ridgeline, the massing forces in the mountains, the 34 Marines at FOB Reaper who were running out of time. I know, she said quietly, and I cannot do anything about it. That night, Maya fell into a restless sleep filled with fragmented dreams. Sanjin Valley mixed with Helmand Province, faces of Marines living and dead blurring together. She heard Sergeant Coburn's voice asking for help, heard the crack of gunfire, felt the weight of hesitation crushing her chest. She woke to the sound of alarm klaxons splitting the darkness. Emergency briefing. All personnel to the operations center immediately. Maya was on her feet before she fully registered what was happening. She threw on her flight suit and ran toward the door, Hargrove's restrictions forgotten. Whatever was happening, it was bad enough that the entire base was mobilizing. She reached the operations center just as the intelligence officer began speaking, his voice tight with urgency. At approximately 0300 local time, FOB Reaper came under coordinated attack from an estimated 200 Taliban fighters. They are reporting heavy casualties and are in danger of being overrun. All available air assets are being scrambled for immediate support. Maya's blood turned to ice. 34 Marines against 200 enemy fighters. This was not a probe. This was an annihilation. The operations center was controlled chaos. Officers shouted coordinates while enlisted personnel updated tactical displays. Radio traffic crackled from multiple frequencies, overlapping voices painting a picture of desperation unfolding in the mountains of Helmand Province. Maya pushed through the crowd until she could see the main display screen. The tactical map showed FOB Reaper as a small blue icon surrounded by red markers indicating enemy positions. The red was everywhere, pressing in from 3 sides, just as she had predicted when she studied those maps 2 days ago. Hargrove stood at the center of the room, directing the response with clipped efficiency. He noticed Maya immediately. Captain Okonkwo, you're supposed to be in your quarters. With respect, sir, those Marines need every asset we have. I can help coordinate the air support. Hargrove's expression hardened. You can help by staying out of the way. This situation requires precise adherence to protocol, not cowboys looking for glory. Before Maya could respond, a new voice cut through the radio static. It was calm, professional, and utterly terrifying in its composure. Bagram Operations, this is Broken Arrow. We're taking heavy fire from multiple positions. I have Marines down, requesting immediate close air support, danger close authorization. Maya recognized the call sign. Captain Rachel Odom was one of the best forward air controllers in theater, a Marine who had guided more combat missions than most pilots would fly in a career. If Broken Arrow was calling for danger close, the situation had already crossed into desperate. Hargrove keyed the radio. Broken Arrow, this is Bagram Actual. We have F-16S inbound to your position. ETA 8 minutes. Stand by for coordinates. The response came back strained but steady. Bagram Actual, be advised that enemy positions are within 30 meters of our perimeter. F-16S cannot engage that close. We need rotary or A-10 gun support. Maya stepped forward. Sir, she is right. F-16S drop bombs. At 30 meters, the blast radius will kill our own people. A 10S can put rounds exactly where they need to go. Hargrove turned on her with barely contained fury. I told you to stay out of this, Captain. The A-10S are not authorized for this mission. Why not? Because the risk is too high. One mistake at that range, and we turn a rescue into a massacre. Maya felt something snap inside her. That is exactly what A-10S are designed for. That is why we exist. You put us in situations where nobody else can operate, and we get the job done. Every pilot in this squadron can make those shots. And if they cannot, Hargrove's voice dropped to ice. If one of your pilots drifts 2 meters and kills a dozen Marines, that is on me. That is on this command. I will not authorize it. The radio crackled again. Bagram, this is Viper Lead. F-16 flight on station. Requesting target coordinates. Maya watched in horror as Hargrove began relaying positions to the fast movers. The F-16 pilots were good, but they were not built for this kind of work. Their weapons were designed for targets that were not standing next to American forces. Viper Lead, Broken Arrow. Negative on those coordinates. Enemy has shifted position. They are now inside minimum safe distance for your ordnance. There was a long pause before the F-16 pilot responded. Copy, Broken Arrow. We are unable to engage at that range. Requesting alternate targets. Maya grabbed a headset and listened to the tactical frequency. The Marines at FOB Reaper were fighting for their lives with small arms while aircraft circled overhead, unable to help. She could hear the crack of gunfire through Odom's transmissions, the shouted orders, the sounds of men and women dying. The casualty reports started coming in. 2 Marines killed in the initial assault. Then a third. A rocket-propelled grenade hit one of the defensive positions, and the count jumped to 5 dead, 8 wounded. Broken Arrow's voice never wavered, but Maya could hear the strain beneath the professionalism. Bagram, we're being overrun on the east perimeter. I have wounded I cannot evacuate. We need guns on target now, or we are all going to die here. Maya turned to Hargrove. Let me go. Right now. I can be there in 20 minutes, and I can stop this. You are grounded, Captain, and even if you were not, I would not authorize this mission. The risk profile is unacceptable. The risk profile? Maya's voice rose loud enough that others in the room turned to look. Marines are dying right now because you will not let us do our jobs. How is that an acceptable risk? Hargrove stepped close, his voice dropping to a whisper meant only for her. One more word, Captain, and I will have you arrested for insubordination. Go back to your quarters. That is a direct order. Maya stood frozen, every instinct screaming at her to act while protocol and chain of command held her in place. She looked at the tactical display, at the red icons pressing closer to that small blue marker, and felt something inside her begin to crack. Major Walsh appeared at her elbow. Maya, come with me. Now, he guided her out of the operations center and into the corridor. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Walsh pressed something into her hand. A folded piece of paper. "Pops asked me to give you this," he said quietly. "I do not know what it says, and I do not want to know. But Maya, whatever you are thinking about doing, think carefully. Hargrove will destroy you." He walked away, leaving her alone with the distant sounds of chaos and a choice that would define everything she had ever believed about duty and honor. She unfolded the paper. Pops had written only 3 words in his careful handwriting. Maintenance Base 6. Through the walls, she heard Broken Arrow's voice one more time, broadcasting on the emergency frequency that every radio on base could receive. "Any station, this is Broken Arrow. We need guns, not bombs. We need close air support capable of danger, close engagement." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of 34 lives hanging by a thread. "We need whisper. If anyone can hear me, we need whisper now." Maya stared at the note in her hand. 3 words that meant Pops had already made his choice, already put his career on the line for what he believed was right. Maintenance Base 6. Misbehavior was waiting, but she did not move. Not yet. There was one more thing she had to do. She walked back into the operations center. Hargrove was bent over the tactical display, coordinating with the F-16S that circled uselessly above Marines they could not save. The casualty count on the board had climbed to 7 dead, 12 wounded. Almost a third of FOB Reaper's complement was already down. "Sir," Maya said, her voice cutting through the noise. "Let me fly. I can save them." Hargrove straightened and turned to face her. His expression was granite. "I thought I ordered you to your quarters, Captain." "You did, and I am asking you to reconsider. Those Marines are dying because we have the capability to help them, and we're choosing not to use it. We're choosing to follow established protocols that exist for good reason." Maya stepped closer. "What reason? What possible reason justifies watching American service members die when we have pilots who can stop it?" Hargrove's voice dropped low and dangerous. "You want reasons? I will give you reasons. Flying an unauthorized mission while grounded. Violating airspace coordination protocols. Engaging targets inside minimum safe distance without proper authorization. Operating an aircraft that has not been cleared for combat status." He counted on his fingers. "That is 4 courts-martial offenses, and I am just getting started. You would be throwing away your entire career for a mission that might not even succeed. And if I do not try, those Marines are dead anyway. You are a liability, Captain. Your judgment is compromised. Your risk tolerance is off the charts. I will not authorize you to fly." The radio crackled with Park's voice. "Bagram, this is Shadow. I am on station above FOB Reaper, requesting permission to engage." Hargrove keyed the mic. "Shadow, you are cleared hot. Engage targets of opportunity outside the 30-meter perimeter." Maya watched the tactical display as Park made his approach. She knew what he was seeing, knew the angles and the distances and the impossible choices that presented themselves when Marines were that close to the enemy. Park was a good pilot, but good might not be enough. Shadow beginning gun run. The sound of the Gu-8 cannon came through the radio as Park fired. Broken Arrow's voice followed immediately. "Shadow, good hits on the North Ridge. Enemy position suppressed. But I still have hostiles inside 20 meters on the east side. Can you engage?" There was a long pause. "Negative, Broken Arrow. I cannot get a clean angle on those positions. The terrain is blocking my approach vector." "Shadow, they are advancing on our wounded. If you cannot engage, we're going to lose more people." Park's voice was tight with frustration. "I'm trying. Give me a minute to reposition." Maya closed her eyes and saw it all unfolding. Park circling, searching for an angle that did not exist, while Taliban fighters crept closer to Marines who could not move. This was Sanjin Valley all over again, except this time it was not her hesitation causing the delay. It was the system itself, the protocols and restrictions that tied the hands of people who wanted to help. Broken Arrow's voice came through again, and this time there was something different in it. A crack in that perfect composure. "Shadow, be advised. I have wounded personnel in my position who cannot be moved." She paused, and when she continued, Her voice was barely above a whisper. I need you to understand something. I'm 7 months pregnant. I have 33 Marines, depending on me, to get them home. 34 lives, including the one I am carrying. Please, find a way. The operations center went silent. Maya felt the words hit her like a physical blow. 7 months pregnant, fighting for her life and the lives of her Marines in a dusty outpost in Afghanistan, calling for help that was not coming. Maya looked to Hargrove. His face had gone pale, but his jaw was set. He was not going to change his mind. Protocol would not bend, not even for this. She did not say another word. She simply turned and walked out of the operations center, through the corridors, out into the night air where the stars were hidden by a haze of dust and smoke. Her feet carried her toward Maintenance Bay 6 without conscious thought. Pops was there, standing beside Misbehavior with a clipboard in his hands. The aircraft was loaded, armed, and ready. He looked up as she approached and nodded once. Maintenance log says she is down for hydraulic inspection, he said quietly. System check required at least 2 hours. I did not see anyone take her out. Maya stopped in front of him. Pops, if I do this, they will come after you too. Let them come. I have been in this Air Force for 28 years. I have watched too many good people get crushed by bad decisions made by men who never had to live with the consequences. He pressed the clipboard into her hands. Your daddy would have done the same thing, and he will be proud of you for doing it now. Maya felt tears prick at her eyes, but she blinked them back. There was no time for emotion. There was only the mission. She climbed the ladder and settled into the cockpit. The familiar smell of metal and hydraulic fluid wrapped around her like an embrace. Her hands moved through the startup sequence automatically, muscle memory taking over while her mind focused on what lay ahead. The engine spooled up with a roar that shook the hangar. Maya taxied toward the runway, knowing that every second brought those Marines closer to death and brought her closer to a point of no return. The tower came alive with confused chatter. Unidentified aircraft on taxiway Alpha. Identify yourself and state intentions. Maya keyed her radio and felt a strange calm settle over her. Bagram Tower, this is Whisper. I am departing on an emergency close air support mission to FOB Reaper. You can court-martial me when I get back. She pushed the throttles forward and felt Misbehavior leap into the darkness, climbing toward the mountains where 34 lives hung in the balance. Misbehavior climbed through the darkness with Maya at the controls, the familiar vibration of the airframe settling into her bones like a homecoming. Below, the lights of Bagram fell away. Ahead, somewhere in those black mountains, Marines were fighting for their lives. The radio exploded with traffic almost immediately. Bagram Tower to unidentified A-10. You are not cleared for departure. Return to base immediately. Maya ignored it. She was already calculating distances, fuel consumption, approach vectors. FOB Reaper was 43 kilometers to the southwest. At combat speed, she would be on station in less than 20 minutes. The question was whether 20 minutes would be fast enough. Operations frequency crackled with Hargrove's voice, tight with fury. Whisper, this is Bagram Actual. You are in direct violation of multiple regulations. Turn that aircraft around now or face immediate arrest upon landing. Maya checked her instruments. Airspeed climbing. Altitude good. Weapons systems showing green across the board. Misbehavior was ready for what was coming. Captain Okonkwo, Hargrove continued, I am ordering you to return to base. If you proceed with this unauthorized mission, I will personally ensure you spend the rest of your career in Leavenworth. Do you understand me? She understood perfectly. She understood that while Hargrove threatened her with prison, Marines were bleeding out in the dirt. She understood that protocol and procedure were worthless if the people they were supposed to protect ended up dead. She understood that some decisions could not be made by committee or regulation. Some decisions had to be made by the person willing to accept the consequences. Maya reached down and switched off the command frequency. The radio went silent except for the tactical channels, and she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Whatever happened next, she was committed. A new voice broke through. Whisper, this is Shadow. I'm still on station above Reaper. I heard what you did. Park, still circling above the battle, unable to help but refusing to leave. Shadow, Maya responded, what is your status? I have been trying to find an angle on those east side positions for 15 minutes. The terrain is impossible. Every approach I try puts friendlies in my line of fire. His voice carried frustration and something else. Fear that he was watching Marines die and could not stop it. Maya pulled up her mental map of the area. She knew that terrain from hours of studying satellite imagery and topographical charts. There was one approach that might work, a narrow canyon that would require flying below the ridgeline, threading between rock walls with almost no margin for error. It was the kind of approach that regulations explicitly prohibited. It was also the only way to get a clean shot at those positions. Shadow, I need you to do something for me. When I make my approach, I need you to draw fire from the north ridge. Make noise, get their attention, keep their heads down. There was a pause. Whisper, that will put me in range of their heavy weapons. I know. Maya's voice softened. I would not ask if there was another way. The silence stretched for several seconds. Then Park's voice came back, steady and clear. Shadow copies. I will draw their fire on the north ridge. You get those Marines home. Maya felt something warm spread through her chest. This was what it meant to be part of something larger than yourself. Park was risking his life because he trusted her, because he believed that together they could do what neither could do alone. That kind of trust was not taught in training manuals. It was forged in moments like this. She switched to the ground frequency. Broken Arrow, this is Whisper. Do you copy? The response came immediately, and Maya could hear the disbelief in Odom's voice. Whisper? Is that really you? Affirmative, Broken Arrow. I am inbound to your position. ETA, 18 minutes. What is your current situation? Odom's professional composure cracked slightly. We have lost 9 Marines. 14 wounded. Taliban have pushed to within 15 meters on the east perimeter. We are running low on ammunition, and I have people who cannot be moved. Her voice steadied. We're not going to last another hour at this rate. You're going to last, Maya said. I am coming. Keep your heads down and mark your positions with IR strobes. I will handle the rest. Whisper, those positions are danger close. Closer than anything I have ever called. I know. Trust me. There was a pause, and when Odom spoke again, her voice carried something that sounded like hope. I trust you, Whisper. Broken Arrow standing by. Maya checked her navigation display. 17 minutes to target. She pushed the throttles forward slightly, coaxing every knot of speed from Misbehavior's engines. The weather report had mentioned a dust storm moving through the region, and she could see it now on her radar. A wall of brown haze rolling across the mountains, reducing visibility to nearly zero. It would reach FOB Reaper in approximately 30 minutes. If she did not complete her mission before that storm hit, nobody would be flying anywhere. One more complication. One more variable in an equation that already had too many ways to go wrong. She thought about Pops, standing alone in that maintenance bay with a falsified logbook that would end his career. She thought about Park, preparing to fly into enemy fire because she asked him to. She thought about Rachel Odom, 7 months pregnant, fighting for 34 lives in a place that most Americans would never know existed. She thought about Sergeant Coburn, 3 years dead because she had hesitated when hesitation meant death. Not this time. The mountains rose ahead of her, jagged black shapes against a slightly less black sky. Somewhere in those peaks, a small group of Americans was holding on by their fingernails, waiting for help that everyone said was not coming. Maya descended toward the canyon entrance, her eyes scanning the darkness for the landmarks she had memorized. The walls closed in around her, stone and shadow pressing close enough that she could almost reach out and touch them. Visual on target area, she reported. Shadow, begin your diversionary run in 60 seconds. Shadow copies. Beginning approach now. Maya took a deep breath and felt the calm settle over her. This was what she was made for. This was why she had chosen the A-10 when everyone else wanted something faster, something sleeker, something that did not require getting close enough to see the faces of the people you were saving. Then she saw it. Muzzle flashes in the darkness, tracers arcing upward from the ridgeline. The Taliban had heavy weapons. A ZPU-4 from the rate of fire. Anti-aircraft guns that could tear through an A-10's armor if they got a clean hit. She keyed her radio one more time. Broken Arrow, Whisper is on station. This is about to get loud. Maya studied the battlefield through her night vision display, her mind running calculations faster than any computer. The ZPU-4 was positioned on the north ridge, its 4 barrels capable of firing 600 rounds per minute. Any standard approach would put her directly in its sights for at least 8 seconds. 8 seconds was enough time for that weapon to shred misbehavior into scrap metal. The standard approach would get her killed, so she would not use the standard approach. Broken Arrow, I need exact coordinates on that anti-aircraft position. Odom's response was immediate. Already marked with IR, North Ridge, bearing 045 from my position, 200 meters out. They have clear sight lines on every normal approach vector. Maya smiled grimly. Good thing I'm not planning on normal. She banked misbehavior toward the canyon she had identified earlier. The walls rose on either side, black stone that seemed to swallow what little starlight penetrated the dust haze. Her altitude dropped below the ridgeline, hiding her from the ZPU's line of sight. The trade-off was that she was now flying through a stone corridor barely wider than her wingspan. Whisper, what are you doing? Park's voice carried concern. Your altitude is showing below terrain level on my display. Threading a needle, Shadow. Stay on your approach. I need that diversion in 45 seconds. The canyon twisted ahead of her, and Maya adjusted her course with tiny movements of the stick. One wrong input, one moment of inattention, and she would become a fireball against the rock face. The margins were measured in feet, not meters. This was flying that simulators said was impossible, that training manuals explicitly prohibited, that every regulation in the Air Force said should never be attempted. But the regulations had not met Rachel Odom. They had not heard a pregnant woman calmly report that her Marines were dying. They had not felt the weight of 34 lives pressing down like a physical force. Maya cleared the final turn and saw the exit point ahead. She would emerge from the canyon directly behind the ZPU position, appearing from an angle they could not possibly be watching. She would have maybe 3 seconds to acquire the target and fire before they could swing those barrels around. 3 seconds. More than enough. Shadow beginning diversionary run, Park reported. His A-10 screamed across the north ridge, guns blazing at secondary positions. The Taliban responded exactly as Maya hoped, every eye and every weapon turning toward the visible threat while she ghosted up from the blind spot below. She burst from the canyon at 200 feet, nose pointed directly at the ZPU emplacement. Her thumb found the trigger and her eyes found the target in the same instant. The GAU-8 roared. 30-millimeter rounds tore through the night at 3,900 per minute, a river of depleted uranium that existed for exactly 1.2 seconds before Maya released the trigger. The ZPU position vanished in a spray of debris and fire, the weapon and its crew eliminated before they ever knew she was there. One down. Maya pulled up hard, trading speed for altitude as the remaining Taliban positions erupted in confused fire. Tracers arced through the darkness around her, green streaks that seemed almost beautiful until one of them punched through her left wing and made the entire aircraft shudder. Warning lights flashed across her panel. Left aileron showing degraded response. Fuel leak in the number 2 tank. Nothing critical yet, but misbehavior was bleeding. Whisper, you have damage, Park called out. I saw impacts on your left side. Still flying, Maya responded. Beginning second pass. She banked around for another approach, this time from the west. Without the ZPU, the Taliban's remaining weapons were small arms and RPGs. Dangerous, but manageable if she kept moving. The key was speed and precision. Get in, deliver the ordnance, get out before they could draw bead. Broken Arrow, talk to me. Where do you need fire? Odom's voice came back tight with urgency. East perimeter, 30 meters from our position. I have 10 or more hostiles advancing on our wounded. If they breach the line, We lose everyone in the medical station. 30 meters. Maya had made shots at half that distance, but never with this much riding on the outcome. Never with a pregnant Marine and a dozen wounded soldiers in the blast radius of a single misplaced round. She lined up her approach, her eyes tracking the IR strobes that marked friendly positions. The Taliban fighters were visible as heat signatures, dark shapes moving through the rocks toward the thin line of Marines holding them back. Hart's voice crackled in her ear. Whisper, I am coming around for another pass. I can suppress the north positions while you engage east. Negative, Shadow. Stay clear of the east side. That is my target. You keep their heads down everywhere else. Copy that. Shadow engaging north and south positions. The two A-10s worked in concert now, a deadly dance that they had never practiced but executed as if they had rehearsed it 1,000 times. Hart's guns hammered the outer Taliban positions, while Maya bore down on the fighters threatening the medical station. She could see them clearly now. Men with rifles, moving in short rushes between cover, getting closer to the Marine lines with every passing second. Behind them, more fighters were massing for what looked like a final push. Broken Arrow, confirm your eastern perimeter. I am about to go weapons hot. Confirmed. IR strobes marking the line. Everything east of those strobes is hostile. Maya steadied her breathing. The targeting reticle drifted across the advancing fighters, and she made the minute adjustments that would mean the difference between salvation and catastrophe. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Then another warning light flared red. Hydraulic pressure dropping. The hits she had taken were worse than she thought. Misbehavior's controls were getting sluggish, the stick requiring more force to move. Whisper, your aircraft is showing multiple system warnings on my tactical display. Hart's concern was evident. You need to break off and return to base. Maya watched the Taliban fighters advance another few meters toward the wounded Marines. She watched Rachel Odom's IR strobe pulsing steadily in the darkness, a pregnant woman standing between her people and annihilation. Negative, Shadow. I have one more pass in me. That is all I need. She pushed the throttle forward and felt misbehavior respond despite her wounds. The old warbird was not ready to quit. Neither was her pilot. Broken Arrow, Maya called out. Keep your heads down. This is going to be close. Maya rolled into her attack run with misbehavior shuddering beneath her. The controls felt heavy, resistant, like the aircraft was fighting against its own wounds to stay in the air. Hydraulic fluid was bleeding from somewhere in the left wing, and every maneuver required twice the force it should have. None of that mattered. The only thing that mattered was the targeting reticle and the men it was tracking. Broken Arrow, calling targets. Odom's voice came through clear and steady despite everything. First group, bearing 090 for my strobe, 25 meters. For hostiles in the open. Maya adjusted her approach by 3 degrees and squeezed the trigger. The GU-8 spoke for less than a second, and 4 heat signatures disappeared from her display. Targets neutralized, she reported. Next, second group, bearing 120, 30 meters. They're using a rock formation for cover. At least 6 fighters. She banked right, ignoring the grinding sound from somewhere in the airframe, and lined up the shot. The rock formation was barely visible in her night vision, but the muzzle flashes from the Taliban rifles gave her all the reference she needed. Another brief burst, and the formation erupted in dust and debris. 6 more down. The Taliban were starting to panic now. Their coordinated assault had become a scattered retreat as the Angel of Death circled above them, striking from angles they could not predict. Some tried to run, some tried to hide. None of them succeeded. Whisper, third group moving toward the south perimeter. Odom's voice carried something new. Hope. 8 hostiles, bearing 180, 40 meters out. Maya swung misbehavior around, fighting the sluggish controls. The stick jerked in her hand as another hydraulic line failed, and for a terrifying moment the aircraft did not respond. Then the backup system kicked in and she regained control, her heart pounding against her ribs. She found the third group and eliminated them with 2 precise bursts. South perimeter clear, Odom confirmed. Whisper, you are incredible. Not done yet. Maya checked her ammunition counter. She had expended nearly half her rounds, but there was plenty left for what remained. Where else? The pause before Odom answered told Maya everything she needed to know. There's one more position. East side, right against our perimeter wall. They dug in during the initial assault, and we have not been able to dislodge them. Every time we try to engage, they pour fire into our wounded. Distance from your people? Odom's voice was barely a whisper. 15 meters, maybe less. Maya felt the weight of those words settle over her. 15 meters was not danger close. 15 meters was insanity. At that range, the margin for error was measured in inches. A single round drifting off target would kill the Marines she was trying to save. She thought about Hargrove's words. What happens when you miss? What happens when one of those 30-millimeter rounds drifts 2 meters to the left? She thought about Sergeant Coburn, dead because she had hesitated. She thought about Rachel Odom, 7 months pregnant, asking her to do the impossible. Broken arrow. Mark your position with continuous IR. Already marked. Whisper, I cannot call the shot. Is too close. If you miss, you hit my people. I'm not going to miss. Maya descended to 500 feet, lower than she had ever flown on a combat run. At this altitude, she could see individual figures on the ground, could distinguish between the Marines huddled behind their barricades and the Taliban fighters pressed against the perimeter wall. The two groups were separated by maybe 20 feet of open ground. She slowed misbehavior to just above stall speed, sacrificing every advantage of the A-10 except the one that mattered most. Precision. The targeting reticle drifted across the Taliban position. Maya made adjustments so small they barely registered on her instruments. A fraction of a degree left. A hair lower. The crosshairs settled on the enemy fighters like a surgeon's scalpel finding the incision point. Hart's voice broke through. Whisper, what are you doing? Your airspeed is critical. You're going to stall. Maya did not respond. Her entire world had narrowed to the sight picture in front of her. The Marines on the left, marked by their IR strobes. The Taliban on the right, visible as dark shapes against the lighter stone of the perimeter wall. The impossibly small gap between them. She exhaled slowly and squeezed the trigger. The GU-8 fired for exactly 3 seconds. 70 rounds of 30-millimeter ammunition traveled downrange at 3,400 feet per second, crossing the distance to the target in less than a heartbeat. Maya watched them impact, watched the Taliban position disintegrate, watched the tracers pass, so close to the Marine lines that she could see individual soldiers flinch. Then silence. The radio was quiet. The guns were quiet. Even misbehavior's wounded engines seemed to hold their breath. Broken arrow, Maya said. Status report. The pause stretched for an eternity. Then Odom's voice came through, cracking with emotion she could no longer contain. Whisper, all hostile fire has ceased. I say again, all hostile fire has ceased. Her voice broke into something between a laugh and a sob. You did it. You actually did it. Not a single friendly casualty from your fire. Every round exactly where it needed to be. Maya felt the tension drain from her body like water from a broken vessel. She had done it. Against every regulation, every protocol, every voice that said it was impossible, she had done it. Broken arrow, she said softly. Get your people ready for evacuation. Medevac should be inbound now that the LZ is clear. Copy that, Whisper. And Maya, thank you. From all of us. For my Marines. For my baby. Thank you. Maya allowed herself one moment of satisfaction, one breath of relief, one heartbeat of triumph. Then misbehavior shuddered violently, and every warning light on her panel went red. Hydraulic failure. Left engine fire. Flight control malfunction. The aircraft rolled hard to the left, and Maya fought the stick with both hands, muscles straining against controls that no longer wanted to respond. She was 50 kilometers from Bagram, flying a wounded bird that was dying around her. Shadow, she called out, her voice steady despite the chaos in the cockpit. I am declaring an emergency. Misbehavior is hit bad. I'm going to try to make it home. Hart's response was immediate. I am on your wing, Whisper. I'm not leaving you. Maya looked out at the darkness ahead and wondered if she would ever see the lights of Bagram again. Misbehavior was dying. Maya could feel it in every shudder of the airframe, every sluggish response from the controls, every new warning light that joined the constellation of red already blazing across her instrument panel. The left engine was trailing smoke. The hydraulic system was failing. The flight controls were operating on backup power that could give out at any moment. But she was still flying. And as long as she was flying, she had a chance. Whisper, this is Bagram maintenance on frequency 77. Pop's voice cut through the static, calm and steady as always. I have your telemetry on my screen. Talk to me. Maya felt a surge of relief at the familiar voice. Pops, I have fire warning on engine 1, hydraulic pressure critical, flight controls degraded. She paused as another shudder ran through the aircraft. And I think I'm losing fuel from somewhere. Copy all. Shut down engine 1 and activate the fire suppression system. You can make it back on one engine, but you need to reduce your power demand on the hydraulics. Maya's hands moved through the emergency procedures, her training taking over while her mind focused on keeping the aircraft level. The left engine spooled down and the fire warning light extinguished, but misbehavior immediately began pulling to one side. Maya compensated with the rudder, adding another demand to the already overtaxed flight control system. Park's voice joined the frequency. Whisper, I am on your 6. I can see the damage. You have holes in your left wing and fuselage. Looks like you took at least a dozen hits. His voice carried admiration beneath the concern. I cannot believe you're still airborne. Misbehavior is tougher than she looks, Maya replied. Just like her pilot. She checked her navigation display. 32 kilometers to Bagram. At her current speed, that was roughly 12 minutes of flight time. 12 minutes of nursing a crippled aircraft through the darkness, praying that the remaining systems held together long enough to get her home. The tactical frequency crackled with a new voice. Whisper, this is Broken Arrow. She was back. Rachel Odom, still on the ground at FOB Reaper, still coordinating the aftermath of the battle Maya, had just won. I wanted you to hear this directly. Go ahead, Broken Arrow. Final casualty report from tonight's engagement. 9 Marines killed in action before your arrival. 14 wounded, all stable and awaiting medevac. 22 Marines still combat effective. Odom's voice softened. When you arrived on station, we had maybe 15 minutes before they overran us. The models say we would have lost at least 30 people, probably more. You saved them all, Maya. Every single one. Maya blinked back unexpected tears. She thought about the faces she would never see, the 9 Marines who had died before she could reach them. 9 families who would receive the worst news of their lives. 9 empty seats at holiday tables for years to come. But 22 were going home. 22 would see their families again. 22 would have the chance to live the lives that had almost been stolen from them tonight. Just doing my job, Broken Arrow. No. Odom's response was firm. You did more than your job. You did what nobody else could do, what nobody else was willing to do. These Marines are alive because you chose them over your career. Do not ever forget that. The lights of Bagram appeared on the horizon, a cluster of brightness against the endless Afghan darkness. Maya had never been so happy to see a runway in her life. Bagram Tower, this is Whisper on emergency approach. I have battle damage and degraded flight controls. Requesting emergency services standing by. The tower's response was immediate. Whisper, you're cleared for emergency landing on runway 25. Emergency vehicles are deployed. Be advised that Colonel Hargrove is requesting you report to him immediately upon landing. Maya allowed herself a grim smile. Of course he was. The approach was the hardest flying she had ever done. Misbehavior fought her every inch of the way, the damage controls making each adjustment a battle of strength and will. Park stayed on her wing, calling out her altitude and airspeed when her instruments flickered, guiding her down through the darkness like a guardian angel. 200 feet. 100. 50. The wheels touched down hard, and Maya felt the landing gear groan under the impact. She applied the brakes carefully, knowing that too much pressure could send the damaged aircraft into a spin. Misbehavior rolled down the runway, trailing smoke and sparks, shuddering like a wounded animal finally allowed to rest. When the aircraft finally stopped, Maya sat in the cockpit for a long moment, her hands still gripping the stick. She was alive. Misbehavior was destroyed, probably beyond repair, but they had made it home. Emergency vehicles surrounded the aircraft as she climbed down the ladder on shaking legs. Firefighters sprayed foam on the smoking engine while medics rushed forward to check on her. Maya waved them off. She was bruised, exhausted, and running on adrenaline, but she was not injured. Then she saw Hargrove. He was standing at the edge of the emergency perimeter, his uniform immaculate, his expression carved from stone. Two security forces airmen flanked him, their presence making his intentions clear. Maya walked toward him, her flight suit stained with sweat and hydraulic fluid, her legs unsteady but her head held high. "Captain Okonkwo," Hargrove said, his voice loud enough for everyone present to hear. "You're under arrest for insubordination, unauthorized use of military equipment, and violation of direct orders. You are confined to quarters pending court-martial proceedings." Maya stopped in front of him and met his eyes without flinching. "Those Marines are alive, Colonel. 22 of them are going home to their families because I was willing to do what you would not." She paused. "Court-martial me if you want. It was worth it." Hargrove's jaw tightened, but something flickered in his eyes. Something that might have been doubt. "Take her to her quarters," he ordered the security forces. "She is not to leave until further notice." As they led her away, Maya looked back at Misbehavior one last time. The old warbird sat on the tarmac, broken and bleeding, surrounded by foam and emergency lights. She had given everything she had to bring Maya home. Maya whispered a silent thank you and turned to face whatever came next. The investigation began at dawn and consumed the entire base like a wildfire. Maya sat in her quarters, confined but not forgotten, while the machinery of military justice ground into motion around her. Major Walsh was the first to visit. He stood in her doorway with a folder tucked under his arm and exhaustion written across his face. "The preliminary hearing is scheduled for tomorrow morning," he said. "Hargrove is pushing for expedited proceedings. He wants this resolved before anyone in Washington has time to form an opinion." "What are my chances?" Walsh hesitated. "Honestly, it depends on who is listening. The facts are not in dispute. You violated direct orders, flew an unauthorized mission, and engaged targets without proper authorization. By the letter of the regulations, you are guilty." Maya nodded slowly. "And by any other measure?" "By any other measure, you saved 22 lives and executed the most precise, close air support mission anyone has ever seen." Walsh opened the folder and handed her a photograph. "This is a still from your gun camera footage. That final shot, the one at 15 meters from friendly positions, the investigation team has been passing it around like a religious artifact. They cannot believe what they are seeing. The photograph showed the moment of impact, frozen in time. Maya could see the Taliban position disintegrating, the rounds striking exactly where she had aimed them. She could also see the Marine barricade, impossibly close, completely untouched. The Marines are not staying quiet either," Walsh continued. "Captain Odom submitted a written statement from her hospital bed this morning." He pulled out another document. "She described what you did in terms that made grown men cry. And she is not alone. Every surviving Marine from FOB Reaper has asked to testify on your behalf." Maya felt something loosen in her chest. She had made her choice knowing the consequences, accepting that her career was probably over. But knowing that the people she saved were fighting for her meant more than any medal ever could. "What about Pops?" Walsh's expression darkened. "Chief Washington is facing his own disciplinary action for falsifying maintenance records. He has been offered a deal. Full retirement with benefits if he testifies that you coerced him into helping you." Maya's stomach clenched. "And?" "He told them to go to hell. Said he would rather face a court-martial himself than betray you or the truth." Walsh shook his head with something like admiration. "That old man has more integrity than half the generals in this theater." The day passed slowly. Maya paced her small room, unable to do anything but wait while others decided her fate. In the afternoon, Park came by with news that the gun camera footage had been reviewed by pilots from 3 different squadrons. The consensus was unanimous. What Maya had done was not reckless. It was masterful. They're calling it the finest display of precision flying they have ever witnessed, Park told her. One of the F-16 pilots said he would not have attempted those shots in a simulator, let alone in combat with a damaged aircraft. But none of that matters if Hargrove gets his way. Park leaned against the doorframe. About that, I heard something interesting. General Whitmore is flying in from Kabul tonight. Theater commander does not usually get involved in squadron-level disciplinary matters, unless the matter has implications beyond the squadron. Exactly. As evening fell, Maya received an unexpected visitor. Colonel Hargrove himself stood in her doorway, his uniform as perfect as always, but something different in his eyes. He looked older somehow, tired in a way that went beyond lack of sleep. "May I come in, Captain?" Maya gestured to the single chair in the room. She remained standing. Hargrove sat down heavily, his hands resting on his knees. He did not speak for a long moment, and when he finally did, his voice was quieter than she had ever heard it. His name was Thomas. "My brother. He was a Marine, like the ones you saved last night. Corporal Thomas Hargrove, 2nd Battalion, 6th Marines." Maya said nothing. She waited. He died in 2007, outside Fallujah. His patrol was ambushed, and they called for air support. A Navy pilot responded. Hargrove's voice tightened. The pilot was aggressive, confident. He was certain he could make a shot that would save the patrol. He was wrong. Maya felt the pieces falling into place. The rigidity, the obsession with protocol, the fear that had driven every decision Hargrove had made since arriving at Bagram. Thomas died from friendly fire. One bomb, 15 meters off target, killed him and 2 other Marines. The pilot was cleared of wrongdoing. He followed procedure as best he could. But my brother was still dead. "I am sorry," Maya said, and meant it. Hargrove looked up at her with eyes that held 18 years of grief. "I came here to make sure that never happened again. I thought if I could enforce the rules strictly enough, if I could prevent pilots from taking risks, I could stop another family from receiving the news that destroyed mine." "You thought you could protect people by controlling them?" "Yes." Hargrove's voice cracked slightly. "And instead, I almost got 30 more Marines killed by refusing to let you do your job." He stood up and faced her directly. "I have submitted my resignation effective immediately. General Whitmore has accepted it. Whatever happens tomorrow, I will not be part of your prosecution." Maya studied him for a long moment. The man she had hated for 3 days suddenly looked like what he had always been. A grieving brother who had let his pain twist into something that nearly caused a tragedy. "Colonel," she said quietly, "I understand why you did what you did. I do not agree with it, but I understand." Hargrove nodded once, then turned toward the door. He paused with his hand on the frame. "For what it is worth, Captain, what you did last night was extraordinary. Thomas would have been honored to serve with someone like you." He left without another word, and Maya stood alone in the silence, waiting for the morning that would decide everything. The hearing room was standing room only. Pilots from every squadron on base had found reasons to be present, along with maintenance crews, operations personnel, and a surprising number of Marines who had made the journey from forward operating bases across Helmand Province. Maya walked in wearing a fresh uniform and found herself facing a sea of faces, most of them friendly. General Whitmore sat at the center of the review panel, a woman in her late 50s with silver eagles on her shoulders and eyes that had seen everything the Air Force could throw at a person. She gestured for Maya to take her seat. "Captain Okonkwo," the general began, "I have reviewed the preliminary findings, the witness statements, and the gun camera footage from your mission. Before I render my decision, I want to hear your account in your own words. Tell me what happened that night." Maya took a breath and began to speak. She told them about the grounding, about watching the tactical display while Marines died, about the moment she heard Rachel Odom's voice calling for help that was not coming. She told them about Pops and the note, about Park's decision to fly as her wingman, about threading through the canyon with anti-aircraft fire lighting up the darkness around her. She told them about the final shot. 15 meters. 3 seconds. 22 lives hanging on the precision of her aim. When she finished, the room was silent. General Whitmore studied her for a long moment, then nodded to a technician in the corner. The lights dimmed, and the gun camera footage began to play on a large screen. Maya watched herself fly that mission again, saw the impossible angles and the precise bursts of fire that had seemed so natural in the moment. From the outside, it looked like something from a training video designed to show pilots what perfection looked like. She heard murmurs of disbelief from the assembled crowd as the final engagement played out, the rounds impacting exactly where they needed to be, the Marine position untouched. The footage ended and the lights came back up. General Whitmore turned to another screen, where a video link had been established with Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany. "Captain Odom," the general said, "thank you for joining us. I understand you wish to make a statement." Rachel Odom appeared on screen, looking tired but alive, her hand resting on the visible curve of her pregnant belly. She was still wearing a hospital gown, but her voice was strong. "General, I have been a forward air controller for 6 years. I have called in hundreds of missions and worked with dozens of pilots. What Captain Okonkwo did that night was the most extraordinary thing I have ever witnessed." She leaned forward slightly. "When she arrived on station, we had minutes left. The Taliban were inside our perimeter, advancing on our wounded. Every other asset in theater had told us they could not engage at those distances. Captain Okonkwo did not hesitate. She flew into anti-aircraft fire, took hits that should have brought her down, and delivered precision fire that I would have said was impossible." Odom's voice caught, and she paused to compose herself. "I am alive because she refused to follow rules that would have killed us. My baby is alive because she chose to risk her career and her life for Marines she had never met. If that is a crime, then I do not understand what we are fighting for." The video link ended, and General Whitmore turned back to Maya. "Captain Okonkwo, I have spent 32 years in the Air Force. I have seen regulations save lives, and I have seen them cost lives. The truth is that no set of rules can account for every situation a warrior might face. That is why we train leaders to use judgment." She stood and walked around the table to face Maya directly. "You violated 17 regulations that night. You disobeyed direct orders from your commanding officer. You flew an unauthorized mission in an aircraft that had been grounded for inspection. By any strict interpretation of military law, you should face court-martial." Maya felt her heart stop. "But regulations exist to save lives," General Whitmore continued. "And you saved 22 of them. You demonstrated skill, courage, and judgment under fire that exceeded anything I have seen in my career. The purpose of our rules is to protect our people. When those rules fail that purpose, it is the duty of leaders to recognize it." She extended her hand. "Captain Okonkwo, the charges against you are dismissed. Furthermore, I am recommending you for the Distinguished Flying Cross for extraordinary achievement in aerial combat." She smiled slightly. "And I am personally recommending that the A-10 program review be concluded with a finding that this aircraft and its pilots remain essential to close air support operations." Maya shook the general's hand, too overwhelmed to speak. Behind her, the room erupted in applause. The ceremony took place 3 days later on the Bagram flight line, with Misbehavior's replacement gleaming in the background. 200 airmen stood at attention as General Whitmore pinned the Distinguished Flying Cross on Maya's chest, the medal catching the Afghan sunlight. "Protocol matters," the general said, her voice carrying across the assembled formation. "Discipline matters, but knowing when to choose lives over protocol. Knowing when to trust your training and your judgment over a regulation written by someone who has never faced combat. That is what separates good officers from great ones." Captain Okonkwo exemplifies that truth. After the ceremony, Maya found Pops waiting by the new aircraft. He was wearing a fresh uniform with a commendation ribbon she had not seen before. "What is that for?" she asked. Pops grinned. "Creative maintenance scheduling, apparently. The general has a sense of humor." Maya laughed and embraced him. "Thank you, Pops, for everything. Your daddy would be proud," he said softly. "I know I am." Park appeared at her elbow, already wearing his flight gear. "Captain, we have a mission. Marine Patrol requesting air support in the Sanjin Valley." Maya looked at the new A-10, at the shark teeth already painted on its nose, at the name stenciled beneath the cockpit. Misbehavior too. She climbed the ladder and settled into the seat that felt like home. The engines roared to life, and she taxied toward the runway with Park on her wing. "Bagram Tower, this is Whisper. Flight of 2, ready for departure." "Whisper, you're cleared for takeoff. Good hunting." Maya pushed the throttles forward and felt the aircraft surge beneath her, climbing toward the mountains where Marines were waiting for the sound of salvation. If this story moved you, drop a comment about what resonated most, or tell us if you have ever known someone who chose what was right over what was safe. "Whisper copies," Maya said into the radio, her voice steady and sure. "We are inbound."